to the next SAT webinar by Elite Home Tutoring. My name is Karen. I am the Associate Counselor here at Plexuss. We have with us Christine, who is our tutor from Elite Home Tutoring. This webinar is the first webinar of the SAT math test. It is called SAT Math Test Strategies. So we hope you all enjoy it. If you would like to ask any questions to Christine while she is lecturing, you are free to do so. You can go ahead and ask your question by clicking on the chat option and sending me your question privately, or you can also send your question to everyone so Christine can see your question as well. If you would like to ask your question to Christine directly, you can use the raise hand option. That you can access the raise hand option by clicking on participants, and the raise hand button should be right there. And then you will go ahead and wait for me to call on you, and then you will be able to ask your question directly to Christine. I did put in the chat to connect with Elite Home Tutoring on Plexuss. You can go ahead and copy and paste that link onto your browser and click connect on your Plexuss profile to connect with Elite Home Tutoring. Anything else? I think that's it. Christine, let's get started.
Okay, good morning. Hope you're all doing well today. We are going to be looking at the SAT math section for the next several times and breaking it down into categories. But first, before that, I'm going to give you today some basic strategies for the math section, things to keep in mind that are very, very important for mastering the math section. Of course, you want to know what your goal score is that you're working for. If you're trying to get an 800 on the math, then you're going to need to answer almost everything right. So you're going to start by working on your accuracy at the beginning and then going from there. But if you're trying to get somewhere less than that, then you can see what number, generally what number of questions you need to get correct and work from there and work on the sections that you need the most work. And that's one general thing. So we're going to take it from there. Basic strategies. Let me share screen and get started here. Okay. There we go. And remember, if you have any questions, please let us know. There we go. Okay, are we looking at the screen together? Karen, let me know if something freezes. Shouldn't, but you never know. Okay, so first of all, the SAT math section strategies. These strategies will apply to all the sections of the test, of the math test. The fundamental math that's included, it's fractions, decimals, absolute values. Those go back to stuff that you did back in middle school and maybe even elementary school. There's algebra, from very simple algebra, 1-2-step algebra, to more complicated advanced algebra that will be tested on and that make you think a little bit more. There is plane and coordinate geometry, so plane geometry such as the area of a circle or of a sector, and coordinate geometry on a coordinate plane. And that ends up being about 6 to 8 questions total. So if you're a little rusty, then you're going to want to focus on that. And then also evaluating tables and some basic trig, SOHCAHTOA, for example. And that's the basis of the test. Section 3 is the no calculator section. So if you are rusty without a calculator on your basic math facts, multiplication, division, believe it or not, or even addition and subtraction, start working those right away, because you could do everything out right conceptually, but not multiply 9 times 5 right, and you're going to get it wrong. So just basics that they're testing here. 20 questions in 25 minutes. So you can see that you have over a minute per question. That's good. You want to move pretty quickly on the first 6 or 7 of them, and they will be easier. The questions are in order of difficulty from the easiest to the hardest. There are 15 multiple choice and 5 free response. And we'll take a look at what that free response looks like. Most of you have looked at the test before here and there from what it appears to be. Okay. in section 4, the second part of the math section, you're allowed a calculator. You could look on the College Board website to see what kind of calculators are allowed, or at least be sure that you don't have one that is not allowed. The TI-84, a very common graphing calculator, is allowed. You can program the calculator. They will not, as of today, they will not ask you to erase your programming. So that could be useful to you. You just don't want to get bogged down with a calculator because time is of the essence. Please take notes as we are looking through these slides, and a copy of one of the tests. You'll want to keep those for when you're practicing on your own. There are 55 questions in 38 minutes. So again, more than a minute per, or excuse me, there are 38 questions. I did this backwards here. There are 38 questions in 55 minutes. Pardon me for that. 38 questions in 55 minutes, and that gives you more than a minute per question as well. 30 multiple choice and 8 free response questions in order of difficulty from easiest to hardest, depending upon where your weak spots are. Okay, any general math questions before we move on? Okay, basics SAT math strategies. Okay, know your formulas cold. I know that the first page has a reference chart on it at the beginning of each math section, and we'll look at those most important formulas and equations for you to memorize at our next session. I'll give you a list of about 17 of them, but the formulas on the first page, they're primarily area and perimeter of squares and circles, and maybe volume and some special right triangles. You want to know those. You don't want to be saying, I wonder if there's a formula for that, because that's a waste of time. You don't want to spend any time on the things that you know you can control on this test. Okay, that's key number one. Know your formulas cold. If you need to make flashcards of them and put them on your bathroom mirror starting now and look at them every morning, you'll know them. You'll know them. It really works. It really works well. I've had students do that and think I'm a little silly about it, but it works. You don't want to be thinking about formulas on the day of the test. Okay. Use a process of elimination, number 2, just like the reading section. So when you get stuck, use a process of elimination. Use your logic and eliminate answers that are not reasonable based on the numbers used in the question. So think on your feet. Say, that's too small of an answer because the question has numbers that don't reflect that. Okay, and then the third basic here is keep a good pace on the math questions. Don't let yourself get bogged down or be stubborn about figuring out an answer to a question just because it seems like you should be able to figure it out. Circle the question. Go, if it's taking you more than a minute, circle the question. You can even pick a possible guess answer and go back to it after you've looked at all the questions in the section at first. Remember that the SAT is testing not just your math skills, but your critical thinking skills and how well you can process information and not be tricked under timed conditions. Many times I have a student say, I knew I could figure this one out, and then I didn't get to the last 5. Chances are that person may not have gotten that answer correct after all, and then they definitely missed 5 questions at the end. So you want to be aware that that is a part of the test that they're giving you, not just your ability to add and subtract and do some triangle questions, but how to stop yourself from getting stuck in an uncomfortable situation that you run out of time. Okay. Next. Okay. Number 4. Work long, detailed questions, one piece at a time in bite-sized chunks. Okay, so this one is not a long, detailed question, but it still needs to be done carefully. If you try to do more than one step at a time, especially if you do it in your head and you don't write it down on paper, you're likely to make mistakes or fall for trap answers. Write things down and draw necessary shapes along the way. And then the last thing on a detailed question, once you think that you have a solution, is to go back to the question to be sure you're answering what the question actually asks for. Here is a very simple question, relatively simple, which people can get wrong on the day of a test because they're in a hurry to get to the harder questions. Frequently, you might end up missing when you practice the first 1, 2, or 3 questions because you're hurrying to get past the easy ones. And it's because they throw a little something in. Notice if 16x minus 2 is 30, what is the value of 8x minus 4? Okay, normal situation, no time constraints. First step would be to add 2 to both sides. I'm not going to write this down, but you can write it down yourself. 16x equals 32. So then x would be what? Answer in the chat, please. So what is the value of x? Not what is the answer to the question. Karen?
We have a B, we have an x equals 2, and the answer is B, and we have 2 and B.
Okay, very good. Some answered the whole thing, some answered part of it. That's right. So x is 2, and therefore, if that means that the answer is B. Now, doing this one at a time as just one simple question, nobody missed it, but I guarantee that some will miss it when they're in a hurry on the test. So the point here is that number 1, notice that answer A is the answer for x. And that's not what they asked for. They asked for 8x minus 4. So always make your last step to go back to the question and say, what did they ask me for? Did I solve for x, but they want y? Did I solve for x, but they want 8x minus 4? Okay, and notice that the other answers, if you had done a minor calculation, computational error, you would come up with other answers. So that's something to, if you'd done 8x plus 4, you'd end up with 20. If you'd done just 8x, you'd end up with 16. So something to keep in mind while we're starting. Remember, this is just basic strategies because it does come up. Always, always go over your mistakes, just like the English and math, English and reading, and make sure that you know what kind of mistake you made. Jot down a note that says, it was a computational error. Jot down a note. I didn't know a formula. I didn't understand this concept. I didn't know what those words meant. I made a silly mistake because I didn't answer the question. I answered one part of the question. Very, very important so you can track what kinds of errors you're making and work on correcting them. Okay. Next part. Use the answers and some basic math. No need to create an equation when you can just use the answers to find a solution. On this test, there's no extra points for showing your work. Just put the answer. So that's the very basics, is you don't need to make an equation. The example says there are 600 school students in Huntington High. If 54 of them are seniors, what is the percentage of seniors in Huntington High? This is a no calculator section. So they are expecting you to do this promptly and without error. And I will give you some strategies that you can use to solve this. Okay. No calculator example. Same question. There are 600 students. If 54 of them are seniors, what's the percentage of seniors in Huntington High? Okay. Here's my key here. Use the answers and estimate. For any given percentage problem, sorry about that, I can find 10% of any number. I'm sure you've learned this, at least some of you have, but remember, by moving the decimal point over of that number over 1 to the left. So to get 10% of 600, you move 600 with a decimal point to 60.0. So what does that mean? Without a calculator, I've just made an estimate that 10% of 600 is 60. That's a math fact without using your calculator, without dividing anything to find a percentage. Since 10% of 600 is 60, that means that 54 seniors, which is what we're looking for, will be less than 10%. So now we're going to look at those answers again. Answers B and D can be eliminated because they are more than 10%. So without doing any basic math, just a teeny little percentage, you're eliminating B and D. And then between A and C, notice that there's some tricks involved. Be careful that you don't pick the wrong answer. A is incorrect because it's 0.09, which is our decimal as a percent, but it has the percent sign after it. So that's 900%, which would therefore be incorrect. So our correct answer is C, 9%, which you were able to do without a calculator, without creating an equation, and just by some basic percentage, 10% questions. If it's 30%, then you would do your 10% and multiply it by 3. And you can work with some basic math without a calculator, without having to rely on a calculator for it. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, last bit of basic strategies. Okay, plug in the answers. Okay, plugging in the answers. Use the answers in the multiple choice to help you. Ask yourself first if plugging in the answers will be a faster way to solve a problem than to just do the math by yourself. Use the answers. They're to your advantage. Okay, and we will look at practice 2, no calculator, question 2 in a moment. So plugging in the answers is always one of your first options for yourself. Second option is similar. Plug in numbers for variables to save you time. So I recommend you do not plug in 0 or 1 for variables, because 0, when you multiply or divide by 0, you're going to get 0, so you can't really tell what it's doing. And the number 1 is as well. You multiply or divide by 1 and you can't tell what happens, so you don't want to use 0 or 1 for variables. But otherwise, plug in numbers into your questions, and that will save you some time. Okay, and then the last part of the basic strategies, and we'll look at all of this on practice 2 tests in just a few minutes, a moment, is free response questions. 4 answer slots, no negative numbers. Okay, any quick questions about the math before we move on to look at practice test 2? Okay, then we will look at practice test 2. So let me unshare my screen for a minute. Were there some new questions there? No. Okay. Okay. So, Karen, can you confirm that this is moving? Yes, thank you. All right, so math, no calculator, 25 minutes, 20 questions, as we said. No calculators permitted. All variables and expressions use real numbers. Figures are, and this just are drawn to scale unless otherwise noted. All figures lie in a plane unless otherwise noted. The domain of a function f is a set of all real numbers. Basic, don't need to read it on the day of the test. So here are our references sheet, area and special right triangles, volume, few very basics. I will let you know next time what those most important formulas are that you will need and that you need to know by heart by mailing them to your mirror if necessary. Okay, the first one we're going to look at for a strategy of plugging in the answers is question number 2. It's a system of equations, and under normal circumstances in your math class, you would use substitution or elimination for a system of equations. However, you don't have a calculator to speed things up, and you do have answers in front of you. So let's try plugging in the answers and eliminating as you go. So I'm going to look at both of my equations. The first equation is simpler, so I'm going to use that one to first plug in my answers. Okay, and remember that when you have a system of equations, the answers need to work for both of the equations in order to be a system, in order to solve for the ordered pair. Which of the following ordered pairs satisfies the system of equations above? Okay, so 3 and -1, 3 minus 3 plus a -2, excuse me, a -2 is not 0, so that one is out. Okay, so the numbers have to be basically the positive and the negative. That's what we learned from answer A. They need to be the positive and the negative of each other in order to work for equation 1. So therefore it's going to be either B or C. We can also eliminate answer D. Okay, so please place your vote for answer B or C now, and we'll take it.
Feel free to send me your answer privately.
Yeah.
Christine, let me know when you would like me to read the answer.
Okay, I see 7 answers, so yeah, go for it.
We have 3 Bs.
Okay, very good. Not a hard question, but we found a faster way to do it. Very good job, you guys. So choose the easier, just to recap, choose the easier equation to plug in your answers. Don't have to take a lot of mental energy figuring that out. Don't want to bother with a system of equations, elimination or substitution, although it could be an option. It's just going to take you longer. Okay, very good. Next one for today, and we are going to go through a lot of these as we're going through the different sections of the types of math that we have. So the next one here is question 12. Okay, question 12. On the other sheet that I had, let me see, I don't think I can't change sheets when I'm sharing. So question 12 says R equals F over N plus F. A website uses the formula above to calculate a seller's rating, R, based on the number of favorable reviews, F in unfavorable reviews, N. Which of the following expresses the number of favorable reviews in terms of the other variables? Okay, that's pretty wordy, but now let's use our answers and take a look at them. Oh, F equals F. What they're asking you to do then, that we learned from looking at those answers, is that they want to solve for F. Solving for F. That's time consuming. You could solve for F, multiply both sides by N plus F and play with it quite a bit. But a good strategy here that I'm gonna offer you to think about before thinking of doing all that work is to plug in numbers for your variables to save time. So this one, you have to pick good numbers. So let's write this equation down, make F 4 and make N -2. When F is 4 and N is -2, then that gives us 4 over -2 plus 4. So that makes R 2. So now let's plug those into our answer choices. Okay, so make F is 4, N is -2, and therefore R is 2. Plug in the answer choices. The answer that is correct is the one that will give you a true statement, a true equation where they're equals on both sides of the equal sign when you plug in those answers. When you plug in those numbers for the variables. Please go ahead and try it and then tell me which answer you get. Okay, try my method even if you think a different method might work. Okay. How are we doing?
We have 1 answer. Again, if you don't want to send your answer to
Okay, here we go.
Answer privately.
It takes a little time because you're having to plug in, you know, it could be your last one that you plug in. It's true. Okay, what are our votes?
We have 2 A's and 1 B.
Okay. B is the correct answer if we were to follow plugging in. One of the people that got that answer correct, are you willing to explain how you did it? So if that's a no, okay. if in B, when we plug in 4 for F and 2 and -2 for N, and we work it out, it works out that you have 4 is equal to 4. But A will not give you that same answer. My guess is that you did not solve by plugging into the variables. Okay, so that's a second strategy. And then the last, we won't have time for that, but I do want to show you what the, oopsie, went the wrong way, what the free response looks like. Okay, there we go. Okay, here is our free response. So notice that there are 4 spaces for you to put numbers, a fraction sign, or a decimal. And on the graders, the computer or the machine that grades it does not care what you wrote down. It only cares about what you gridded in. Free response or grid in section, both of those are appropriate. So notice that unless your question says in fraction form or round to the nearest whole number or to the nearest tenth, it will accept any answer that works, that fits in that slot with 4 spots. So 7/12, 2.5. Here are 3 acceptable ways of writing 2/3. 2/3, 0.666, 0.667. Okay, and also notice that if your number is less than 4 digits, you can fill it in anywhere you want to start. So you can start on the far left, the middle, or the far right, depending upon how many digits you have. And again, if you're working these problems and you have a negative number for an answer, then you either did it wrong or it's asking for one possible value and the negative answer is not a possible value because there's nowhere to put in a negative number sign. Okay. And then here are the rest of our free response. That's what they will look like. Okay. For today, our time is up. And next time we will look at the fundamentals and formulas. I imagine I have some questions because we went through these basic strategies really quickly, but we will be continuing with those same strategies as we apply them to the various types of the test. The geometry, plug in the answers, use basic common sense, use your logic, don't get bogged down by a hard question. Questions?
I have a question, Christine.
Yes.
This is a general question about the math test. What should students do if they encounter a problem they are unfamiliar with?
If they're unfamiliar with it, then you're going to use strategies such as eliminating extreme answers that couldn't logically be right based on the numbers that are used in the question. You could see if there's any part of it that you understand. I would circle it and keep moving on the test. Sometimes when you come back to it, you go, oh yeah, I remember something basic about that. I remember a little something about that. And if you absolutely don't have an idea, don't sweat it. It's one question. Pick a letter for the day that you're going to use to plug in for an answer if you just don't know an answer, and say, pick in advance. My letter of the day is, for example, D. And then I just go, okay, I'm going to circle D, and I'm going to circle the question. I'm going to come back to it one last time, and that's it. And that's it. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we. So next time, be sure to be ready with a piece of paper to write down those formulas that are absolutely necessary for the test. I will try and put them in order of priority, the ones that are most common on the test, but still you just want to know them all. 17 formulas or equations is not a lot to memorize. You probably know most of them, but it's important to know which ones will be there.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right, so here are some ending notes for everyone. The next SAT webinar by Elite Home Tutoring, it will still be on the math test. It will be on fundamentals, and it will be on Wednesday, April 15th at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will very much appreciate if you download our Plexuss app. If you download it, you'll be able to receive instant notifications. We'll also very much appreciate it if you rate it and review our app. You can go ahead and do so on the App Store or Google Play. We appreciate your feedback, any feedback you are able to give us. Chat with my counselor if you have any questions regarding this webinar, or if you have any questions about your journey to higher education, we're always happy to help with that as well. Connect with Elite Home Tutoring on Plexuss. I put in the chat in the beginning, if you scroll up, the link to the Elite Home Tutoring Plexuss profile. You can go ahead and access it through there. Another way you can access it is by clicking their logo on the banner that is on our Plexuss newsfeed page. You can go ahead and click their logo on the left-hand side, and it will take you to their profile so you can connect with them and ask them any follow-up questions. Lastly, it's not on the list, but let your friends know about the SAT webinars, these webinars will be about the SAT math test. The next one's coming up, so feel free to let them know. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you very much, Christine. We will see you all on Wednesday. Bye, everybody.